Hello and welcome back, guys. So in this particular session what I'll be showing is that how we can basically be messing around with some DNS queries and DHCP queries. So first we will be looking at some commands: sudo ls cat tail nano. These are the commands that you should know, and other commands that you should know is that ds client dig ip. Okay, so we need to first of all install a DHCP. Sudo apt get install dnsmasq. So we need to install this. Why we are installing this is that we need to we use this for simulating like how DNS queries and DHCP queries works in a real-time environment. Okay, we can't be doing that in a production environment, so we need to do it in a testing environment, right? So the first thing that we should do is that, so we have a DHCP server set up already. So if I do IP address so srv, so you can see like we have an IP address over here. So 1.0 is the network, 1.1 is the router's IP address, or the DHCP server's IP address, and it's /24 because we will be getting an IP address. So that means we will be getting an IP address of .2 to 254, right? So if I do the same thing, and then if I have, so the DHCP works in a server client kind of model, and then so since the server already has an IP address, our client might not. If you have a look over here, it does not have an IP address, right? So we need to request for an IP address. So DHCP server sees in its list like whichever IP address is not assigned and which is not leased out, it will basically provide that IP address to the client, right? So first thing first, we need to basically enable like the so I just took cat. Yeah, first of all we need to enable, right, so the debugging mode for DNS queries, so that we can see what's happening behind the scene. So I'll just show you the cat of this. So this is our configuration file for the server. So either interface is given, bind interfaces. It's like you can bind different MAC address to interfaces. A domain name is given, our router's IP address is given, our DNS server to announce DHCP client is also given, and then the DHCP range is 1.2 to 1.254. Lease time is 24 hours, right? So we need to add this line over here, these two lines. So since I've already added it up, so you don't need to worry about it, but we need to add these two lines. Okay, so it's log queries, log facility. What we are doing over here is that sudo nano nc dnsmasq be my company, right? So what we are doing is that you just need to log these queries over here, log queries, right? And then you need to add in log facility. So log queries, what this does is that it just logs the logs whatever activity is happening with DHCP query, dnsmasq, and then that is being logged at var log dnsmasq log. So this is where inside this log directory is like where all the system logs and everything exists. You can even have a look at it. So lsl var log. So if I do // so you can see like there is different kind of logs over here, right? So it just stores all the log, right, for your system. Okay, different logs are stored in this particular file, so that's where I'm storing it as well. So it's inside var, is that it just means variable, right? So it keeps changing, that's why. So I just don't need to explain all this thing, I've already explained it, right? So first of all we need to enable the debug log debugging mode. So since I've already done that, so let's just see how dnsmasq is working or not. So service dnsmasq status, alright, so it's running. So if you want to stop it, just type sudo service dnsmasq stop, and it's stopped. Alright, so since I've already done this log queries and everything else, so you can use this particular command to check whether our whether the configuration that we changed is actually working or not. Okay, so since I wanted to show you this as well, so manager, so I'm just looking at the manual right now. Router advertisement and DHCP server. So I just wanted to have a look at the options. So test is like it just reads the syntax check configuration file, and exists a code 0 means like everything is working. So 0 means 0 error. So if all is okay or non-zero otherwise, right? So it just means if there is an error, non-zero is just basically being given out. So H is like don't read the host name. So I just wanted to have a look at -c. -c is not here. All right, let's just grep it, right? Why not? I'll be able to teach you another command as well. -c, right? All right, quit, I mean, and then -c. Standard NVIDIA camera is line, okay. Okay, so I can do the same thing. Just to capital C, yeah. So exit codes, blah blah blah, everything. Okay, this is like configuration file. Okay, so -c is configuration file. So sudo dnsmasq. So that's how you can basically search for it. Or you could have also done this, I think. Could have done. Oh, that's not allowed. So it's just things like it's a option for grep command. So we are not going to look at that right now. So C, and then we will be providing it with the file location, the configuration file location, dnsmasq d/my company, right? So if this prints out like syntax okay, that means our configuration file that with all the changes that we made is all right. Okay, otherwise what it does is that it gives out error. Okay, so it just gives out 1 or something else, right? So 0 means 0 errors. Okay, so after that what we can do is that, so since we've already stopped it and had a, so why we are stopping it is that we just wanted to basically reread the configuration file so that it's basically spits out like, so if you're running it right now, so it's running using the old file, right? So we wanted to reread the configuration file, that's why we stopped it, and then we'll start it again. So if you want to start the service again, so all you need to do is not this command start, start. Okay, so sudo service dnsmasq start, that's the command that we'll be using. So let's just clear it out so it just shows it's running, right? So once that's done, so we can, let's start experimenting with DNS queries first of all. Okay, so since our configuration file and everything is all saved, so what we'll do is let's just look at DNS queries. So example.com is like the file that we've kept inside our local host. So if I look at like this particular site, and then this is the site name that I'm looking at, and then this is the local host. So first of all what I'll do is I want to specify which server that I wanted to look at. So if I say google.com, right? So dig command basically provides us with the, okay, it's a bit slow. So if you see, like it just provides us the IP address, right? So it just looks like does the job of NS lookup, but it definitely has more information about it. Okay, so the server, the reply was from this particular server. That's the API address as well. And then so if we do the same thing, but if I do dig example, so I've already edited the host file, and I have added example.com at the local host. So I wanted to use the localhost as a server, so I'm just specifying use localhost. Okay, that's our server, so it just gives out like the IP address for it, right? So it just gives out the reply, right? So similarly, what happens, so when we are requesting this particular DNS query, what happened was that, so sudo tail var log, so let's just have a look at our dnsmasq log. So if you have a look over here, everything is done. So it's just read the etc resolve configuration using name server. So it used this particular server, and then it so that was for the Google thing, right? So query example.com, right? So we queried example.com, and then it forwarded the example.com to this particular address, and then we got a IP address over here, right? So we should have done example.com, but this is how it basically does that. Okay, so next thing, if we do the same thing again, what it does is that it won't forward it right now. Okay, it because it has it in cache, so it will just basically generate it via the cache. Okay, so see over here, now it's not forwarding it to this particular IP address. Okay, so it's just using the cache to basically it give us the IP address. Okay, so that's what we are basically looking at, right? So it's just, so this is how a caching server works as well in real life. This is how it looks like. Okay, so next thing we can also do is that let's just do dig, so something that does not exist, right? So example.local localhost, right? So you can type anything, right? So it just says like, okay, that does not exist. And then if you have a look at, it's a bit slow. If you have a look at our log again, what it says is that it's just forwarded to this, and then it just says like annex domain, right? So it just means like it does not exist because we are using @localhost, right? So the localhost does not know the IP address of this particular site. What was that? Example.local, right? So let's just try it one more time. I think it will similarly use like just the, see, it will just use the cache, right? So it won't basically skips this particular process, this and the reply as well, right? Since the data is already there, it's in our cache, so it will get deleted after a certain period of time. I just don't know exactly, but it's, you can Google it up, right? Next thing is that we'll be looking at some DHCP client. So how does the DHCP client work is that, so it definitely is a server and a client and everything, and then what we can do is sudo ds client. That's the command that we'll be using. And then interface is our eth client, so since we are running it from client, and then verbose, the output, just to make it a bit better or even readable, right? And then run it in debugging script mode sf /root /debug DHCP. Okay, debug underscore DHCP.sh, right? So first thing it sent was discover, and then after that it requested for that particular IP. So discover, and then offer was for 1.221, and then we basically got an app for that. So our new IP address is 1.221. So if I do IP address, so client, that's our interface, right? It's it's not yet showing over here. So what does this SF mean, right? So I just have not explained that. So SF is like parameter which is actually used to modify the machine's network settings only, not the whole network. Okay, just the machine's settings will be modified. Okay, so let's have a look at the thing here as well, our DNSmasq log as well. What happened was that there was a discover, so it's a broadcast that was sent by the client, and then there was an offer of that particular IP. In this case as well, it's sending it to this particular MAC table, a MAC from its MAC table, because it definitely recognized it, right? So because even if the data was sent to a switch, it definitely kept it in the MAC table because it basically communicated with the MAC first of all. So it can use like L2 kind of, it will be using data link layer during this whole process. And then after that, what it did was it basically provided like offered this particular IP address, and then it just said okay, it just requested it back to this particular to the server. And then after that it's all happening on MAC address, right? And then after that it basically got a hack for that particular MAC address. So after for that particular IP address, and then after that what happens is that every communication that takes place between them will be through IP address. Okay, so from link 3. Okay, so L3, so from network layer, that's where the communication will happen from onwards. Okay, okay, don't worry about anything else. So as you can see, like there is each CLI is a Linux instance, right? So we can also basically, that's like the machine that it's running on. So we can basically be using dig Linux instance dot my company dot local @localhost. Alright, if you see, okay, it does not have any IP address yet, right? So if you have a look at the DNSmasq, it will definitely say the same thing again. So if you have a look at log, it will just say like an X domain. That just means like it just does not know the domain of it. So basically what does DNSmasq does is that, why is it saying Linux, is that it's basically, it knows the names of the machine, so that like other machine, those request the names, DNSmasq will basically recognize the name associated with that particular address. Okay, that's why it's basically remembers that. So we can also change the configuration. So what we will do is that, let's have a look at the configuration file. Yeah, we will need to add this particular MAC addresses to the configuration file. So all these things should be added up, right? So how can we do that is that sudo nano, remember the configuration file that we had changed for logging and all in the beginning of this particular session that we had done. So we will be looking at that file again, and then come down over here, and paste it, right? So this is write it down over here. QUERIES log queries log facility is /var/log/ dnsmasq.conf, not configuration, log, right? Since we are talking about log, we can get rid of that line. Oops. I think it's 24 hours. Right. Log queries and everything is all done. So it just says us like just change the IP address range as well. So we can do that. So if I just do 1.20, so we just want, so suppose if you don't want to assign like IP address until 1.20 or 1.19, so that you'll be using it for giving it to primary devices, so you could do that, and then rest of the IP address you can just leave it as it is. And then if you want, you can change the lease address as well, or I mean the lease time to 6 hours. Right, so why we are doing that is that, so since the first IP address, yes, first 20 IP address will be assigned to the devices that we know, and then like 20 other rest of the IP address you can just say like for any guest or whatever that comes into the office or whatever, right? So if we do that, Control X, and then save, yes, we want to save it in the same file name. So if we do that, it should work, and then we can verify that. Let's verify it as well, right? So sudo dnsmasq, so same thing again, that like we did when we had first edited for the log thing, right? So dnsmasq test -c, so that's just the configuration file location, dnsmasq, and then dnsmasq .t/, and then our configuration file is over inside that directory, and it's system check. Okay, that means we are good to go, right? So all our problems has been fixed. So now what we can do is sudo service 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 dnsmasq start. It's a bit slow, but don't worry, it should work out. Okay, it's already running, right? So next thing that we'll do is that, so let's just link IP address. Okay, so let's just link, I mean let's just change the MAC address of our client. So link sudo IP link set eth client, so interface name and then the address that you want to assign it. So AAPB CC DDAE and then C3, right? That's the MAC address that we wanted to be there. And then what we can do is that, let's just show the IP address now. Sudo IP address so for our eth CLI. So since if you see over here, our Ethernet MAC address has been changed, right? I mean our client MAC address has been changed, right? So once we've done that, what we need to do is that we just need to bind it as well, okay? Which we have already done. So if C3 requests it, it will get an IP address of 1.3, right? So now when we request for IP address, we should get this particular IP address, not any other IP address, okay? Not random. So this is called MAC binding, okay? That's what I was talking about. So all you need to do is that is just request for it. So ds client is requesting it. So ds client is the command that we'll be using for requesting it. Underscore CLI -d verbose, so debug is as well, and then root /debug underscore DHCP.sh, and it's requesting, right? So first of all, it will be a request, but it won't be offered that particular. So it will send an offer now, or you know, it will do a discover again. It will do a discover again. It's because it did not get any reply for it from it. So it will do a discover, and then the offer that it sends is like it just sends. What the hell? This should not happen. This should not happen. You know why. Sudo dnsmasq. I think it's already running, that's why it's doing that. Sudo service 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 dnsmasq. Reload, yeah. I think the restart should do the job. Restart. Now let's do it again. Now let's request for our IP address again. So now if you see over here 1.3, this is what happens, so now you're like, what happened, right? So what happened was that it was already running in the background, right? And then it did not read the configuration file again. So what you need to do is that you need to do reload. Okay, so basically there are three things, okay, that you need to be careful about. Is that when you stop the service, like your service might be running in like a real-time environment, right? So you just don't want to stop it. So what you do is that you just don't restart it as well, just reload it. So what it does is that it just reloads the configuration, or just reloads the file or configuration settings, but it does not stop the service. Okay, so that no disruption is caused to the service. Okay, so since this is a service, because it's a DHCP server, right? So it's just serving out IP address. So in order to do that, always remember stop. It's like it's completely stops it, and then like the service will be interrupted for a while if you start it again, like immediately, right? So restart also does the same thing, but if you just do reload, it will just redo the configuration. So like you just don't want to have any downtime in your network, right? So yeah, that's how it basically works. You see, like if you have a look at, so I just wanted to show you one more thing as well. So sudo cat var log dnsmasq log. So if you see over here, we've made a lot of queries, like, so in our DHCP, if you see over here, it just did a discover for this particular MAC address, and then it sent an offer of 1.3. okay, and then request was for that particular IP address, and we got a ACK for that, but this one is even better. Okay, so what it did was it basically sent a request for that IP address. Not that, yeah, it sent a discover for 1.62, but what happened was that it did not it basically got denied for it, and then it just did like discover again. It just sent out a broadcast again. All these things are happening based on MAC addresses. Okay, no IP address will be used during the communication of when you receive a DHCP, or when the DORA process is happening. DORA is like discover, offer, request, ACK. Okay, so offer was sent for that, and then it just sent okay request, and then after that it was acknowledged, and then the computer got the IP address, or the client got the IP address. Okay, this is how it basically works in real life as well. So this is like dnsmasq is very important tool, which just helps us like do this kind of simulation in real life, okay, without actually running it in a production environment. So just don't do it in production environment, just do it in your test environment like this. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it for the day. If you have any confusions regarding this particular session, please do comment down below. I definitely help you out. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.